Now we go to the next presentation. Probably I can introduce, I should wait 2 minutes because I have to go by the time, you know. So some people are joining sharp at 11. So, Dr. Alauddin, you will conclude with ختامه مسك إن شاء الله تعالى.
Yes, inshallah. Thank you very much.
إن شاء الله تعالى. Okay, so let me just introduce our next presentation. So we have now a very interesting this is a very interesting sort of like a topic that has to do with digital economy, because all of the previous sessions about education, smart education, preparing future generations and instructors, they at the end of the day they lead into the digital economy, and this is what Dr. Alauddin Al-Omary will present. So let me briefly introduce Dr. Alauddin Al-Omary. He is an associate professor of computer engineering at the University of Bahrain. He is the founder and the managing editor of the International Journal of Computing and Network Technology. His interests revolve around computer architecture, computer networks, and artificial intelligence. Dr. Al-Omary received recognition in several capacities. He received the Japanese Monbusho Research Scholarship Award. He received the Best Paper Prize at the 2015 International Conference of Biomedical Engineering and Environmental Engineering, and received an Author Excellence recognition by Emerald Publishing in 2017, and an Excellent Tutor by Hawaii Middle East ICT Competition. Now I will, without further ado, I will let Dr. Al-Omary to present his talk about FOSS security risk and their mitigation to boost world digital economy. The floor is yours, Doctor.
I cannot share it from my side. I don't know why.
مهندس أحمد ممكن yeah, you can share it now.
Okay. Can you see the slide now?
Can you make it in presentation mode?
Yes, okay. Okay, thank you very much. And I am delighted and honored to be with you today. I also thank the organizing committee for letting me share with you my thoughts and presentation. My presentation is about the free open software security risk and the mitigation to boost the world economy and education. I will start by talking. A lot of my colleagues already talk about the free open software. I just go fast on that advantages and what is them, what are they, and how they component are used in, and I will concentrate on the threat and mitigation of the open source of using of this open source software, and then I will conclude. I will mainly talk about the threats that can be faced when using free open software open source software, and the errors and security threats, how can we mitigate them. Usually, the free open source software is a software whose code is available for public inspection, modification, and enhancement. Typically, this software is created through community collaboration and is maintained and updated on volunteer basis. The open source software can be used according to the variety of licenses, depending on what the creator has implemented. examples of Linux, OS, Apache, web server, WordPress, Mozilla, Firefox, Google TensorFlow are just a few of the most used software available. The also understand software giant like Microsoft and Google emphasize the importance of the free open source software in developing software. Microsoft is already undertaking key projects, Virtual Studio Code, TypeScript, with more than 16,000 contributors to open source software. And Google also has key open source projects, which is flagship machine learning library TensorFlow. The advantage is cost effective. It offers quick feature integration, ease access, and often maintained by others. Speed product time to market. Developers can use these high quality functionalities to better concentrate on their product functionality. And so, how to use the free open source software in institute or company code base? We have many scenarios. The first scenario is a whole FOSS component is used within the code base. The second scenario is certain files of the FOSS component is used within the code base. And the third is code step-based form from the FOSS component is used for code base, or a mix of 1 and 2 and 3. So, and also the need to manage. It's not only using companies and institutes need to manage the use of the open source software. They need a policy, usage policy. They need component identification, license compliances. The thing here, security vulnerabilities, the auditing, workflows, integration with software development and production infrastructure and processes. There is many cybersecurity risk associated with the use of the free open source software due to its community construction and largely unregulated distribution. A variety of risks, including some cybersecurity risks, come with the use of open source software. With the transparency of open code comes the risk of many eyes looking for vulnerabilities to exploit and potentially weaponize. There is many cases of, in 2015, repacking of Xcode or for malicious code distribution. Security firms alerted Apple that 39 applications available through the application store were infecting iPhone and iPad. Once downloaded into the infected device, the malicious applications connected to remote command and control server and upload the sensitive user information as part of the botnet. In 2016, also, and the following dispute about naming rights and unreleased open source software package, a well-known developer removed all of their open source software package from MPN, and the software registry used to distribute some code, which is in total developed and deleted. They deleted 273 packages from their store, but the problem rested primarily with one left also. In 2017, Python package attackers created malicious library with names that are closely resembled the name of built-in Python library, and unsuspecting developers downloaded the malicious one instead. The malicious package contained the same code as the origin, except for the installation script that was changed to include malicious code. In 2018 also, they have hijacking a cryptocurrency stealing Python package called Al-Omary was discovered in Python software repository. The name of the package was deliberately meant to be associated with a confused from legitimate package, with the same name. One of the top 20 most downloaded piece of software within Python repository. In 2018 also we have the backdooring event. In 2018-19 we have the web bin compromise beginning at April 19, 2018 and 19, discovered in 2019. Popular web, and in July 2019 we have another takeover of popular Ruby gem package. In August 2019, discovery of 11 backdoor Ruby gem library, and most of these attacks come in the library used by open source. The open source developer, we can just divide them into two types. We have the founder that can, a giant company like Google and Microsoft, or a single author or a small team of volunteer developers. The open source libraries maintained by the internet giant companies like Microsoft or Google have better security check and vulnerability update than small teams of volunteer developers. Most open source developed by small team of volunteer developers libraries targeting specific features may not be designed with the security in mind. How often the code is audited for vulnerabilities is completely unknown and almost certainly not a part of any formal process. So the dangers come from mostly from these single author or small team volunteer developing software. Why we have security risk here? Because FOSS is really well documented or tested, especially for the small team of volunteers. There is no fixed version, there is a lot of version. With the trust, and also companies need a reliable way to identify the free open software components that are in use. And with the transparency of open code comes the risk of many eyes looking for vulnerability to exploit. The main threat, we can summarize the main threat is that the excessive access, the lack of verification, a lack of support, widespread use of outdated version, and open source library threat as attacker insert infected code inside the FOSS library intentionally and publish them for attacking intention. So the excessive access, open access means the code is available to all, which creates opportunity for cyber threat actors to manipulate code maliciously. Using FOSS can give threat actors opportunity to gain access to your network and information. The lack of verification, there are no guarantee that qualified expert conduct proper testing and quality assurance throughout the development of the open source software, or that those who review the code thoroughly check its security. So this lack of verification can make your IT infrastructure vulnerable. Lack of support. Most free open source software does not have dedicated support. And maybe for some of them they have this, but you have to pay money for that. Without the proper support team update, this and security patch may not be available. If vulnerabilities are discovered in the software, cyber threats actors can exploit these vulnerabilities to gain access to your organization network or system and information. So here the responsibility of the project community that is maintaining the free open source software is to report and patch any known vulnerabilities so that the users will be alerted and can take action for that. You see that the attacks that already happened many times. So this is because of the attacks that come with the libraries and attackers. The open source library can deliver tremendous benefit to development teams, but it can also contribute a lot for the digitalization and the prosperity of the world, but it may be used by attackers. And this is what happened for the last years. A high percentage of the code in many applications today may originate from open source libraries. The inevitable existence of vulnerabilities in these libraries lead to significant open source risk. Many development teams make the mistakes of believing that open source code is inherently safe, or at least safer, because the code has been developed and used by many people who would have previously identified the problem in the software. But this is not true. Application built with open source code contain an average of 7 vulnerabilities, and 44 of those programs contain critical vulnerabilities that can lead to major breaches. This is as reported by this site, whitesourcesoftware.com. And with no one in charge of ensuring that vulnerabilities in open source code are published or fixed or patched, open source risk continues to plug, and development teams worldwide, only about 1/3 of the teams regularly perform vulnerability testing to secure open source code. So there is 78% of the companies run open source software, but less than half are managing it properly. The cause of open source in libraries, here these may include non-vulnerabilities, vulnerabilities inherited from other libraries, or vulnerabilities that have been fixed but reappear because the library version, you are using old version, and we have 0-day and half-zero vulnerabilities about which little is known, making it possible for criminals to exploit them more easily. Also, we have the malware. Sophisticated attackers are now using simple techniques to create libraries that appear to be innocent, but actually contain malicious code, or are updated with malicious code at a later time. At the beginning, they have it ordinary library, and then they have update, but in the update, they insert malicious code on it. So open source libraries containing malware can quickly lead to compromise of the web application, and are frequently used in ransom attacks. Ways to mitigate open risk resources. The project against vulnerabilities and malware in open source code, every institute must take specific steps. First, you have to enforce security policies. Companies must have policies that govern how developers access and use open source library. Be sure to use the right up-to-date authentic library. Understand what open source library are being used for and where the vulnerabilities are. Also update vulnerabilities library regularly. Collaboration between application. Here we have to make collaboration between the application security team and the development team. It's very critical. As update to library can sometimes break application. So also to mitigate the malware. This is the most effective way to stop the malware, is to create warning for developers who are accessing vulnerable libraries, and to create enforcement rules on continuous integration servers that will fail to the building if a valuable part of the library with high open source risk are used in the code. And there is tools now available also in discovering these things. Okay, so before acquiring a new software, the organization should determine the level of risk that is tolerable and can be accepted. When your risk tolerance is clearly identified, you can narrow down your choices and pick the software products that support your business need and security requirement. And before installing a new software, your organization needs to measure and mitigate the vulnerabilities, such as logs, audit, and incident response process. Also test software before installing it, and test software that throughout its life cycle, such as when it needs to be updated or patched. Continuous monitoring and testing can reduce the risk of exploits. And when using the free open source software, you should manage all software using the same procedure and tools that you use for commercial products. As always, train your employees on cybersecurity best practices that can help them securely use and manage software products. There is some tools that are used for fixing vulnerable packages. We have the OWASP tool, we have the Sonar Cube tool, we have FOSS tool, many other tools. These tools will give you, for example, the first tool, give you 10 related issues for developers to test the injection or broken authentication, sensitive data exception, XML external entities, security misconfiguration, and it will give you hotspot and vulnerabilities. So, and this is available tools that can be used, and it will give you dedicated report to track project security against the top 10 issues here, I1 to I10. And also to report facilities communication between categorizing vulnerabilities in term developers understand. Okay, track compliance at a project or portfolio level, and differences vulnerabilities fixed from security hotspot review. Security hotspot are uses of security sensitive code. They might be okay, but a human review is required to know if they are okay for sure. As developers code and interact with security hotspots, they learn to evaluate security risk with learning more about secure coding practice. The security vulnerabilities require immediate action. So we have the Sonar Cube provide issues, detailed issues description, and code highlight that explain why your code is at risk. So you just follow the guidance, check and fix and secure your application. So these also a very good tool is the FOSS open source vulnerability scanner. Will prevent vulnerabilities from entering the code base, and also fix multiple issues at once with smart remediation tips and update strategies, quick fixes with review patches and release comparison for complex workflow support, and also have minimal false positive from well-guarded, updated, and accurate vulnerability database. And give you notification and alert and real-time security state and status is also available. So this is one of the best tools that can be used to test any software you are developing using the open source. Yesterday also Mr. Eric was explaining about a new development secure operation that are coming from Amazon, which has a three objective for build faster development and make it secure and keep it stable. So this is also one of the very, very good development tools that can be used also when making software using open source. Okay, help you to build from the beginning here security. It will give team and community effort, not a person, automated and automated security, and also it will audit. To edit the code for you, implement the control segment to validate and audit code and artifact as part of the process, development process. In conclusion, many education institutes and companies benefited from the use of open source software, and there is no reason not to take it as well. However, knowing the risks posed by open source software going into the development process will help you to avoid pitfalls associated with sharing crowd-sourced code. And by taking into account the risk and implementation protection strategies, in addition to other as required to secure your system, you can help ensure the safe use of open source software. We discussed many ways that can be used to mitigate open source, from policy to tools. It's also helpful for fixing vulnerable packages. The institute should manage all free open source software using the same procedure and tools that are used for commercial product. The institute should also train their employees on cybersecurity best practice that can help them securely use and manage software product. The software will give you a lot of advantage as we see it before, and it's contributing a lot for the education, and we have a lot of software. We have a lot of software education. Actually, it was in the slides. They use it in education, but I thought that the time is limitation of 30 minutes. I could go for that, so I just omitted some part of the software that talk about free software that are useful for education. And I believe a lot of my colleagues before me highlighted a lot of these things. These are the sources that I use for the presentation. And thanks for listening. And time for question and answer.
MashaAllah. Thank you very much, Dr. Alauddin. On time, exactly. I should learn from you guys how to be a good timekeeper for myself. Okay, so before we go to Q&A, let me just, thank you, Dr. Alauddin, because you have nicely summarized your presentation in your final slide. To just supplement that with my own reading, Dr. Ala started his presentation by talking about FOSS, about its advantages, the enterprise uses of FOSS, and he gave an example of companies like Microsoft and other companies like Microsoft has Visual Studio Code. He also talked about how FOSS is used in companies' code base. Then he alluded to FOSS management and its components. And I really like when he talked about cybersecurity, in which he talked about the main threats like excessive access, lack of verification, lack of support, widespread use of outdated and finally open source library threats as attackers, etc. So, and thank you very much, Doctor, for making conclusion by offering some suggestions like tools, open source tools to mitigate security threats, and the tool that you have mentioned for vulnerability scanner. Now let me go to the audience. Do you guys have any questions? Any questions? If you don't have questions, I always have many questions.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, so just let me see Q&A, nobody there. Okay, so one question is, you mentioned an interesting statistic, Doctor, that is 78% of companies that run open source. I mean, 78% of companies run open source. This is very interesting finding. But then you say that less of those among those companies, 78% who have adopted open source software, less than 50% of these companies or these solutions are not effectively managed. What do you mean by less than 50%, or half of them are not effectively managed? In what way? And what is your guideline for those who will be adopting open source?
Yeah, this is a statistics come from the white paper published in 2016, Future of Open Source survey results, and they claim that 50% of 78% of the companies run open source, but half of them are managing it properly. Managing it properly means that they are following the auditing and from time to time auditing and see if there is vulnerabilities information, and also mitigation, and so these the things that used for management actually. Also installing patches and other things. So they use it and forget about managing it. This is I think the statistic what this statistic talk about.
Very good. Thank you very much. Which is very promising. I mean, very promising to see. Like many companies are now FOSS advocate, and they are working to liberate, you know, commercial businesses. Are there any questions? Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, Prof. Karim, تفضل.
Okay, thank you, Graham. Prof. Graham. Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Alauddin, for your nice presentation. And usually when we have some KPI to measure our risk on the securities. Have you defined some KPI to measure, for example, your vulnerability?
Actually, this is I think that are done by some expert to measure how much security. I think there is some here. You have to depend on the situation actually. So you have to the organization should determine the level of risk that it's tolerable and accepted, and also before installing they need to measure or detect, mitigate vulnerabilities, auditing and incident, and also to check authentic site, and also when installing it, train employee and use a procedure and tools, non-commercial, use the same procedure that you are using for commercial products to that. And I think that this, the one here, the open tools that we have here are doing this automatically.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alauddin Al-Omary, for your answers and for your interesting presentation. In the end, please join me to thank Dr. Alauddin Al-Omary and the previous speakers in this session.